The USS Exemplar cut through the dark expanse of space, a lone ship of humanity's fleet, cast adrift on a mission they hadn't fully understood until the moment they arrived. Captain Adam Hayes leaned over the holographic display in the command center, his eyes tracing the alien vessel on the screen, a vast, gleaming craft that didn't look like anything Earth had ever encountered. The Zorak, the species they were to meet, had made contact weeks ago, but now, standing on the precipice of first contact, there was an unspoken tension in the air. He turned to face his crew. The bridge was silent, except for the hum of the ship's engines, now steady in this alien space. Hayes, a man with the kind of military experience that made him lean toward action rather than conversation, looked to Lieutenant Colonel Elijah Carter first. The seasoned African-American engineer stood with his arms folded, analyzing the star maps and preparing for whatever came next. "You ready for this?" Hayes asked, his voice sharp but measured. Carter's lips twisted into a thin line. "We don't have much choice. We've been waiting for this moment our entire lives. The real question is, what are the Zorak really after?" Before Hayes could respond, Commander Nathaniel Brooks, a communications specialist with a quick mind and even quicker reflexes, stepped forward. His small-town upbringing had always given him a unique perspective on human nature. He wasn't easily rattled, even now, when they were about to meet beings with technology far beyond anything humanity had. "They're waiting for us. All we need to do is speak their language." His voice was calm, almost too calm, literally and figuratively. "Let's hope they understand human," Hayes muttered. Brooks tapped a few controls on his console, syncing the ship's communications array to the alien frequency. "I'm getting a transmission. It's not in any format we've ever seen, but I'm going to try to—" The lights on the bridge flickered, and the air seemed to grow thick with something unspoken, a sense that this moment would mark a change. Before Brooks could complete his sentence, the transmission hit them like a wave, raw, disorienting, and filled with purpose. A booming voice filled the room, speaking a language neither of them could understand. But it was the tone, more than the words, that was the problem. It was cold, dismissive. A tone that wasn't an invitation to communicate, but an order. "I'll try to isolate their syntax," Brooks said, his fingers flying over the controls. Captain Hayes studied the transmission intently, but he knew the core issue now. The Zorak were not extending an olive branch, they were extending an ultimatum. There was a strange metallic undertone to the communication, as if it were a mechanical voice, but with a presence of something living, something dangerous. And it was clear from the moment the Zorak spoke that the humans were not in control of this encounter. "We're not equipped for this," Hayes muttered, standing taller, as if to block out his growing sense of dread. Isaac Turner, the ship's chief technician, slid into the command center, looking every bit the overworked genius he was. His eyes were wild with excitement, but the strain was visible. He'd been working nonstop for days, adjusting systems and recalibrating tech to ensure the Exemplar had the best chance in this alien domain. His hands trembled, whether from exhaustion or the weight of what was happening. It was hard to say. "They're demanding a response," Turner said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. "And it's clear we're not on equal terms." "What do you mean?" Hayes asked. Turner pointed to the hologram, showing the Zorak ship's trajectory. "Their ships are vast, with enough firepower to wipe us out 10 times over. And their ultimatum isn't a request, it's a declaration." A low murmur ran through the bridge crew. Dr. Joseph Williams, the biologist, stood back, arms crossed, his brow furrowed as he absorbed the data. "We're either too insignificant for them to notice or too dangerous for them to ignore. Either way, we're in the thick of it." Brooks gave a half-hearted chuckle. "Isn't that just how it goes with us?" Hayes turned to his crew, his face hardening into the mask of a leader who had little time for doubt or hesitation. "This ship is all we have. And I'll be damned if we let them think we're not worthy of the same respect they show their own people. I want us to respond with everything we've got." He tapped his fingers on the arm of his chair. "Tell me, Lieutenant, what's the deal with this ultimatum?" Brooks was already tapping at the console again, the holographic interface displaying symbols and words that made no sense, but the tone of the transmission shifted. Finally, He spoke, voice heavy with the weight of what he was about to translate. "They want us to leave. Now." A pregnant silence filled the bridge, the crew trying to make sense of the words they had just received. But that wasn't the worst of it. The Zorak weren't just threatening their ship or their lives. They were threatening humanity's very existence. Their ultimatum was clear: leave or face extinction. "Get me Earth," Hayes said coldly. "Now." Brooks nodded and sent the transmission, though the response time was agonizingly slow. The Exemplar was already deep within Zorak space, too far for immediate reinforcements to arrive. Hayes's heart raced, but he had trained for this. He had led his crew into battle countless times, but this was different. This was beyond just survival. It was about humanity's future. His gaze flickered to Dr. Williams, who was tapping notes into his pad. The biologist looked up, shaking his head. "They're far beyond us. The Zorak possess technologies that make us look primitive. But we can't back down." Hayes felt a surge of anger at the realization. "So, what? We're supposed to just roll over and let them wipe us out?" "No," Carter said firmly. "Not if I have anything to do with it." Isaac's voice cut through the tension. "We might be outmatched, but we still have one thing they don't: adaptability." Captain Hayes clenched his fists, staring at the massive Zorak ship on the view screen. This wasn't just a mission. It was the fight for humanity's survival. They had only one ship, but it would have to be enough. A transmission from Earth finally arrived. The voice on the other end was calm, but Hayes could hear the tension in the background. "Captain Hayes, this is your call. Do what you must." He took a deep breath, meeting the eyes of his crew one last time. "Prepare for everything. We're not leaving. Not today." The crew exchanged looks, each understanding that the course of history had just been irrevocably altered. There was no turning back. The Zorak had made their move, and now humanity would make theirs. And with that, the Exemplar moved forward into the unknown. The Zorak ship loomed large on the view screen, its sleek, dark silhouette cutting through the void like a predator. The Exemplar was small in comparison, a fragile vessel dwarfed by the alien craft's imposing presence. The crew stood on the edge of a precipice, each man steeling himself for what would come next. Captain Hayes stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the alien ship. There was no room for doubt in his mind now. Whatever came of this encounter, humanity's fate was in their hands. "We're approaching the Zorak Council Station," Lieutenant Colonel Carter said, his voice even, though the weight of their situation hung in the air. The ever-present hum of the Exemplar's engines was the only sound as they drew nearer to the station, a massive construct tethered to the Zorak vessel. Dr. Joseph Williams, the biologist, paced quietly in the background. He had studied alien life forms for years, but even his expertise felt inadequate in the face of such a seemingly unbeatable foe. "We're walking into the lion's den," he muttered. "We have no idea what these creatures are capable of." "We'll find out soon enough," Hayes replied, keeping his voice steady. "Brooks, any word from Earth?" The communications officer, Commander Nathaniel Brooks, glanced at the static-ridden screen. His fingers danced over the controls, trying to establish a clearer connection with their home planet. "The transmission's unstable. It's coming through, but it's choppy. They're aware of the situation, but—" Brooks paused, his eyes narrowing. "They can't send reinforcements in time. They say, it's up to us." A brief silence filled the bridge. Hayes gritted his teeth, his mind racing with the implications. No backup, no rescue. If they failed, Earth would have no chance to respond. "Understood," Hayes said, turning toward the others. "Carter, I need you to prep the ship's weapon systems. I don't expect we'll be engaging in a firefight, but I'd rather be prepared for the worst. Isaac, get down to the engineering bay and make sure everything is running at maximum capacity. We might need every ounce of power we have to keep our edge. Joseph, stay sharp. If they give us anything we can use to understand them, I want it." As the crew moved to their stations, Hayes leaned over the console, gazing at the station ahead. He hadn't expected a peaceful resolution, but even so, the Zorak's presence felt overwhelming. The alien technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. How could one ship, just this one ship, possibly stand against them? The council chamber inside the station was an architectural marvel, a vast circular space surrounded by walls that seemed to shimmer in every conceivable color. Zorak representatives, each towering and impossibly elegant, sat on raised platforms, watching with calculating eyes as the humans entered. Their presence was unsettling, their sharp, angular features almost too perfect to be real. Hayes, feeling the weight of the moment, squared his shoulders and stepped forward, flanked by Carter and Brooks. The rest of the crew waited in the back, ready to spring into action if needed. A tall Zorak, its skin gleaming with an iridescent hue, spoke first, its voice calm but resonant. "Human delegation, you are welcome. However, your presence here is an infringement. You are here at our mercy. State your intent." Brooks stepped forward, his voice unwavering. "We come in peace, representatives of Earth. Our mission is diplomatic. We seek to understand your species and establish a cooperative relationship." The words sounded hollow in the immense chamber. The Zorak's cold gaze settled on Brooks, as if evaluating the sincerity of his statement. One of the Zorak, a figure draped in dark robes, leaned forward and spoke with an air of finality. "You speak of peace, but your actions do not reflect this. Humanity's expansion has already reached a level that disrupts the balance of the galaxy. Your presence here is a threat." The chamber grew still, and Hayes felt a chill creep down his spine. It wasn't just a rejection of peace. It was a condemnation. "Are you saying humanity's very existence is a threat?" Hayes asked, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions within him. The robed figure's gaze narrowed. "Your species has taken resources, made contact with others, and now you come to us. We do not tolerate such interference. This is your final warning. Leave now, or face extinction." The words landed like a blow, echoing in the vast chamber. The council members, once statuesque and silent, murmured among themselves. Hayes felt the full weight of their ultimatum pressing down on him. There was no room for negotiation, no offer of dialogue, just the cold certainty of a power far greater than theirs. For a moment, no one spoke. Brooks exchanged a look with Hayes, his jaw clenched. The silence was broken by the voice of Dr. Williams, who had remained quiet until now. "We're not equipped for this. We've never faced anything like this before." The Zorak's leader turned to Williams, its eyes cold and assessing. "Then you should return to Earth and prepare for what is coming. Your species is not as formidable as you think." Carter, ever the pragmatist, spoke up, his voice low but firm. "We can't just leave. You're asking us to abandon everything we are, everything we stand for." The leader of the Zoraks studied Carter for a moment, then shifted its gaze back to Hayes. "The humans are adaptable. That has been noted. But your adaptability will not save you now." Hayes's mind raced. There had to be a way out, a solution, something that would prevent the slaughter of his crew and the destruction of Earth. But the Zorak were unyielding, their power undeniable, and the mission they had been sent on was slipping further from their control by the second. For the first time since this mission began, Hayes felt the full weight of the decision resting on his shoulders. A single ship, just this one ship, had to carry the fate of humanity on its back. Their entire future depended on the actions they would take in the next few moments. He took a slow breath, staring at the Zorak Council. "We won't leave. We came here to talk, and we're not walking away until we do." The room was silent as the Zorak Council members exchanged glances. Their cold, calculating eyes locked onto Hayes with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. The leader spoke again, its voice dark and final. "Then you have chosen your path. Prepare yourselves." Hayes's heart thundered in his chest, but there was no turning back now. He looked at his crew, each man standing resolute in the face of impossible. And in that moment, Captain Hayes knew The fight for humanity's survival had only just begun. The air inside the Zorak Council chamber was thick with tension. Hayes could feel it in his chest, as if the very atmosphere were pressing against him, a suffocating weight. The Zorak leader had spoken, and their words were a death sentence. "Prepare yourselves," it had said, its cold voice ringing in the vast chamber. For a brief moment, Hayes's mind raced. He had thought of a dozen ways this could go wrong, but he hadn't expected to be so swiftly confronted with the impossible. "We're not leaving," Hayes said again, his voice louder now, more forceful. His eyes locked on the alien leader. The words had been a calculated choice, a declaration that humanity would not back down in the face of annihilation. But as the words hung in the air, there was a painful truth sinking in. The Zorak had already decided humanity's fate. Carter stepped forward, his voice steady. "You're making a mistake. Humanity's survival isn't a threat to you. We're not here to conquer or destroy. We just want to learn." The leader of the Zorak didn't flinch. Its cold eyes stared down at Carter with an intensity that sent a chill through the room. "You believe your species is different," it said, "that your survival is worth the cost of others. But you are wrong." Dr. Joseph Williams, his hands clenched in frustration, finally spoke up. "You've already judged us. You've condemned us without even hearing our side." His voice trembled, but there was an edge to it, an anger he hadn't yet allowed to surface. "We're not your enemy." The Zorak leader's gaze flicked toward Williams, its expression unreadable. "Then why did you come? Why invade our space?" Its words sliced through the room like a blade, an accusation they couldn't deny. The exemplar had intruded on Zorak territory without permission. The mission, meant to be peaceful, had been misunderstood, misinterpreted as something far more dangerous. The leader's voice echoed again. "Your presence here is an error that cannot be forgiven." Isaac Turner, the ship's chief technician, was studying the surrounding technology with quiet intensity. Despite the pressure mounting around them, he kept his cool, his hands still. "We're not here to make enemies," he muttered under his breath. Then louder, "But we've learned. We've adapted. If you give us a chance, we can make this work." The Zorak leader didn't respond immediately. Instead, it turned its head, speaking to the others in its council with rapid clicks and strange guttural sounds. The other figures, each towering and imposing, remained eerily silent as the leader turned back to Hayes. "The council has spoken. You are not welcome here. Leave now, or you will face the consequences." It was as if the ground beneath Hayes's feet had shifted. He had known the stakes were high. He had known the danger. But to be given an ultimatum like this, with no room for negotiation, no chance for peace, it was more than just a threat. It was the end of everything he and his crew had worked for. The exemplar was the only ship humanity had sent. One ship. One fragile hope against the impossible. "We can't leave," Hayes said, his voice steely. "We came here for peace, and we're not walking away until we've earned it. Humanity isn't just a footnote in your history." The alien leader's gaze hardened, as if taking in the full weight of his words. "Then you will die as one." A ripple of unease passed through the room. The crew's resolve remained unbroken, but the odds seemed insurmountable. The Zorak Council, so far removed from human concerns, had no empathy. They had no need for dialogue. They had already determined humanity's fate. And yet, despite the crushing weight of that certainty, Hayes felt something stir inside him. It was not just the resolve of a captain, but the raw, unyielding force of humanity itself. They didn't back down. Not from any challenge, no matter how impossible. "We're not leaving," he said again, quieter this time, but his voice rang with authority. "And we will not let you erase us." The Zorak leader stepped down from its elevated platform, its elongated form looming over them. Hayes's heart pounded as the creature moved closer, its sharp, piercing eyes never leaving him. The silence in the room grew oppressive, broken only by the distant hum of alien machinery. The leader reached out, and for a moment, Hayes feared it would strike. But instead, It offered something far more terrifying, a test. "You seek peace," the leader intoned, its voice like ice. "Then prove it." Hayes's mind raced. "What do you want us to do?" The leader's lips curled in something between a sneer and a smile. "You will face our greatest challenge, human. Survive it, and we will reconsider your fate." Before Hayes could respond, the council chamber around them seemed to shift. The walls retracted, revealing a vast arena, the floor a strange mix of metallic plating and alien symbols. Hayes felt the ground under his feet rumble, and suddenly, the crew found themselves standing on a vast battlefield. The Zorak had shown their hand. Not only had they condemned humanity, but they had turned the council's decision into a spectacle. A massive door at the far end of the arena slid open, and something stepped through, its shadow casting a long, monstrous silhouette across the floor. The Zorak council remained seated, impassive, as the creature, part beast, part machine, entered the arena. Isaac's eyes widened as the creature's form took shape. "That thing's made of technology and flesh. We're supposed to fight that?" "No," Hayes said, his voice low. "We're supposed to survive it. And somehow, we will." The Zorak leader's voice rang out, cold and indifferent. "If you survive this, we will consider your request. But you will fight it alone. Your crew is not welcome in this trial." "Understood," Hayes said, his voice steady despite the blood pumping through his veins like fire. He wasn't about to let them make him a pawn in their game. He would survive this, or he would die trying. The creature roared, its machine-like limbs clanking against the ground as it advanced toward him. Hayes's crew, standing just outside the arena, watched with a mixture of fear and determination. There was no room for failure, no escape, only survival. And in that moment, as the creature charged, Hayes knew the path ahead would be more than just a test of strength. It would be a trial of everything humanity had ever fought for. The creature before Hayes was monstrous, an amalgamation of alien technology and raw, pulsating flesh. It towered over him, its eyes glowing with a cold, mechanical intensity, and its limbs extended like weapons crafted from bone and metal. The Zorak Council watched in silence, the weight of their judgment pressing down on the entire arena. There would be no mercy here, no reprieve. This was not just a trial of strength. It was a test of survival, and humanity's very existence hung in the balance. Hayes stepped forward, his boots scraping across the alien floor, eyes locked on the creature as it let out a low, reverberating growl. His mind was already working, scanning every detail of the creature, every movement, every glitch in its mechanical gait. The Zorak's challenge was clear. Fight or die. "Stay focused," he murmured to himself, steadying his breath. He had faced impossible odds before, but never like this. The creature lunged, its speed surprising for its size. Hayes barely managed to roll to the side, his heart pounding as the monster's metallic claws slashed through the air, missing by inches. He pushed himself to his feet in a fluid motion, his military training kicking in. He needed to stay ahead of its strikes, to think faster than it could move. From the edge of the arena, Brooks watched with bated breath, his knuckles white from gripping the railing. "Come on, Captain," he whispered. "We're all depending on you." Carter stood next to him, his jaw tight, his eyes narrowed. "He's not just fighting for his life, Nate. He's fighting for all of us." The creature shifted again, its movements synchronized with a disturbing precision. Hayes could feel it. This was no random attack. It was intelligent, strategic, trying to force him into a corner. The ground beneath his feet began to shift, rising up in jagged formations like an alien puzzle, making it harder to find his footing. But Hayes refused to be trapped. He took a step back, calculating his next move. If he could just get a clear shot at its weak point, the exposed joint between its arm and torso, he might have a chance. But the creature was too quick, too precise. It anticipated every move, every feint, as if it knew exactly what he was thinking. Isaac Turner's voice crackled over the communicator, his tone filled with a mix of frustration and desperation. "Captain, We've detected a power surge in the creature's core. It's adapting, faster than we can keep up with. Hayes's mind flashed to the Zorak leader's words. You will face our greatest challenge. It wasn't just a test of physical strength. It was a test of human ingenuity. The creature was designed to learn, to adapt, to counter every move. And the longer he fought it, the more it would learn. Damn it, Hayes muttered, his eyes flicking to the edge of the arena. He had to change tactics, or he would be outmatched. The creature roared again, a sound that reverberated through the entire chamber, and charged once more. Hayes had no choice but to meet it head-on, his pulse racing as he darted forward. The creature's claws came down, aiming for his head. He ducked and twisted at the last second, feeling the cold wind of its strike rush past him. His hand gripped the alien environment around him, his fingers grazing the jagged edge of a raised platform. It was a risk, but it was the only opportunity he had. With all his strength, Hayes leaped up, his boots digging into the platform as he launched himself at the creature's vulnerable side. He drove his knee into the exposed joint, pushing himself further with a surge of raw force. The creature staggered back, letting out a mechanical screech as it tried to regain its balance. Hayes didn't hesitate. He pressed the advantage, his hand reaching for the strange alien weapon strapped to his hip, one of the few things he'd brought from the exemplar. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The creature's red eyes locked onto him with a malice that sent a wave of cold dread over his body. But Hayes was focused. He aimed the weapon directly at the creature's core, where Isaac's warning about the power surge had come from. With a grim expression, Hayes pulled the trigger. The blast hit its mark. The creature shuddered violently, its glowing eyes flickering. It staggered, its mechanical body grinding as sparks flew from its sides. But it didn't fall. Not yet. Come on, stay down, Hayes growled under his breath, backing away slowly. His muscles screamed from exertion, his mind racing as the creature's body began to glow brighter, more erratic. It was still adapting, still trying to fight, but Hayes knew he couldn't afford to wait much longer. He saw the flicker of a force field, a faint shimmer, just beneath the creature's surface, protecting its core. His eyes widened in realization. The Zorak had designed this thing to resist direct hits, to ensure it could adapt to every possible strike. The creature was built to fight indefinitely, but only because it had no weaknesses. And Hayes had found its flaw. He had to exploit it before it could exploit him. Isaac now, Hayes shouted, his voice raw. Turner's voice came back over the comms, sharp and urgent. I'm locking onto the signal. Give me a second. The creature reared up again, its claws outstretched, but this time, Hayes was ready. He rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding a deadly swipe, and then sprang to his feet. The creature was fast, but not faster than human ingenuity. As Turner's voice crackled in his ear, Hayes moved, staying low, weaving between the jagged alien terrain. There was a sudden burst of energy, an electric crackle that lit up the arena, and the creature's movement slowed. Its glowing eyes dimmed. Hayes didn't hesitate. He took the shot. The creature fell to the ground with a thunderous crash, its body convulsing once before it went still. For a moment, all was silent. Then, the Zorak leader's voice echoed through the arena, cold and unreadable. You have survived. Barely. Hayes took a step back, his breath ragged, and faced the council. This is who we are, he said, his voice strong despite the exhaustion. We fight, we adapt, and we never give up. You might have underestimated humanity, but we'll make sure you never forget us. The Zorak Council was silent, their expressions unreadable. But for the first time since the encounter began, Hayes saw something flicker in their eyes, a shift, a crack in their unyielding facade. The leader's voice was softer now, almost reluctant. Perhaps we have misjudged you. The fight was over, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun.